Hello and welcome to the Academy of Powerful Caregivers presented by Kevin Shorter. This is Module 1, The Motivation of a Caregiver. Today's lesson is How to Love Others.
Hello and welcome back to the Academy of Powerful Caregivers. I'm Kevin Shorter, and today we're going to look at how to love others. Our last lesson we looked at how to have empathy without losing hope. And today, as we look at how to love others, we're going to hit that in a different way, about not losing hope. Because we know as Christians we are called to love, and that is a desire of our heart. We want to love well. We want to love thoroughly the people that we meet. But the pressures of this world and some of the people that we meet, they start to override our awareness and our belief of God's goodness and our awareness and belief of God, the goodness of man. And so sometimes we just have to love because it's the right thing to do. Romans 12:9 says, love must be sincere. And so we desire that. We want it to be the very fiber of who we are, that we're loving other people well, with every part of ourselves. And knowing that, that sincere love is our goal, that we're going to draw from the well that God's put in us. But sometimes we have to train our bodies to do this. We have, we want to be sincere, but sometimes just loving by faith or loving, I'm just choosing to love even though I don't feel like it. It doesn't feel sincere, but it is better than obviously hating the person. So let's look at how we're going to maintain our love. And what I want to first start off by looking at something written by Ted Dekker. Ted Dekker is a Christian fiction writer. I first got introduced to him back in the days when I was with Campus Crusade. He co-wrote a book with Dr. Bill Bright, The Blessed Child, and it was the goal that Dr. Bright wanted to get across is have a fiction story to tell about how to live out this Christian life, this supernatural life. And my wife and I, we enjoyed his writing, just got hooked on Ted Dekker after that. Read several other of his books, and so just really like him as an author. And I came across, he has his book out now, Waking Up, and this is his story of kind of his journey with God, and his desire to receive and to get acceptance from God. And so let's look at his words. Jesus' teaching was clear. Any sinner can show love to those who love them. But true love shows kindness to those who are cruel and dishonoring to you. Paul was plain. True love holds no record of wrong. Love was the greatest power of any I saw. So I pressed in hard, determined to be the one who would succeed in earning God's favor by loving as he asked me to love. But no matter how hard I tried to submit myself to God, I wasn't able to love in this way. No, really, I tried. But in my heart, where it really matters, I was offended by those who were mean and lashed out against me, and I judged them in return, thus failing to show true love, without which all else was worthless. I never doubted my standing in the next life, but I often felt shame in this life, constantly disappointing God in my failure to love as he asked me to love. I mean, how many of us are like this? We feel this desire to love others, but then we fail and we get frustrated because we feel like we can do it, but when other people judge us or lash out at us, we just run out of energy, or worse, someone is just not our personality type, and they do things that frustrate us, and it's not sinful. It's just our own lack of love starts showing up. And so Ted Dekker is talking about his desire. He knows it's important in the kingdom, and he was trying to, in his words, earn God's favor by loving well. And he said for 15 years he would write books about these Christian fictions telling stories about God's love, and his desire is kind of like how he wanted that to feel true in his own life. And he continues on in a later part of the book, and I want to read that to you as well. I remember that day so clearly, there in my office, drowning in a sea of self-condemnation and unworthlessness. A gentle question whispered through my mind. Does your Father in heaven not love you in the same love that he asks you to love others? I blinked, unable to comprehend. The room went utterly still. What is love? But I knew, of course, love was a staggering concept that held no record of wrong and was kind to those who hate. Love was the fruit of the Spirit by which all God's children will be known. Love was what I failed at. Has your Father failed to love you in this way? I sat in my chair, stunned, unable to accept the implication that anyone could possibly love me in such a way. I never thought to ask God to love me the way he asked me to love others. This is really the main thing to consider when we're in a desire to love other people, is that God doesn't ask us to do anything he doesn't give us the power and the ability to do ourselves. If we look at the scriptures and the commands that we're given, 1 John 4:19, it says, we love because he first loved us. Colossians 3:13, we forgive because he forgave us. 2 Corinthians 1:3, we comfort with the comfort he's given us. In Deuteronomy 16:17, we give because he first gave to us. And so we see it throughout Scripture and throughout the things that we have, is when God asks us to do something, he wants to actually give it to us first. And so we're giving that of which we have already received from God. So it's not we don't run out. We don't have an empty tank because we're not giving things we don't already have. But then there's a passage in Philippians 2. It says that, therefore, my friends, continue to work out the salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you to will and act according to fulfill his good purpose. So it says that, for it is God who works in you. So we're working out what God has worked in. So what he's called us to do, he's given us the ability and given us the resources to do them. And so we know that to love and to love well, it means that we need to receive the love from God as well. And there are really two things that help us with this. And the first is found in Luke 7:36-50. When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. A woman of that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's home, so she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. As she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who's touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she's a sinner. Jesus answered, Simon, I have something to tell you. Tell me, teacher, he said. 2 people owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii, and the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he forgave the debts of both. Now which of them will love him more? Simon replied, I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven. You have judged correctly, Jesus said. Now he turned toward the woman and said to Simon, Do you see this woman? I came into your house. You did not give me water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not kiss me, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore, I tell you, her sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little loves little. Then Jesus said to her, Your sins are forgiven. The other guests began to say among themselves, Who is this who even forgives sins? Jesus said to the woman, Your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Well, let's start with the obvious, and the thing that we look at the most is that our love is motivated by his kindness towards us. Those who have been forgiven much love much, and love well. And so we talk about them, we realize, and all of us, and it's not that anyone has really sinned more than the other, but most of us are not aware of the fullness of the forgiveness and love that God has for us. And the more we are aware of that, the more we take it on, the more we actually love. So that's really the first thing we need to look at. But the second is look at the situation. Both the Pharisee and this sinful woman, they both wanted to be with Jesus. So the Pharisee invited Jesus in to dine with them, and Jesus came. The woman wanted to be with them, and Jesus let her be at his feet. And so if we look at this, that as we draw near to God, he draws near to us. And so as we look at even the stories, that some of us don't get more of God is because we don't actually want more of God, or we don't actually come to more of God. And so part of it is if we want to be able to love, we need to be able to receive his love, and we need to actually allow him to come into our lives even more by actually going to him more and going to his presence and spending time with him. And as we spend time with him, we receive love. And as we receive love, then we can give love. One thing I do want to actually hit on is that some of us think that the sinful woman, because of her great sins, is able to love more. And so if the more we sin, the more we love is kind of the connotation that we kind of take away from it. But really that's very dangerous road to take, because if we take that route, then we almost we want to, actually sin more and sin, often, because then we can actually receive more of God's love by realizing that, oh, he's forgiven that, he's forgiven that, he's forgiven. And that's really dangerous, because you're not, to actually receive the love of God is not to continue to sin. We receive the love of God, we actually stop sinning. And so we don't need to have a huge testimony of all the crap that we've done in our past, but we actually have to be aware of our stuff, because we look at even at the Pharisees. I mean, some of the harshest words that Jesus gave us towards the Pharisees. So to say that the sinful woman was more a sinner than the Pharisees is incorrect. But she was aware of her sin. She was aware. I mean, she had a whole community telling her the things she's doing is wrong. So she knew it, and then she was able to come into the presence of God, the presence of Jesus, and to find acceptance and forgiveness. And then she actually was overwhelmed by that goodness, and that's why she continued to cry and continued to wipe his feet and to love on him, to pour the jar of perfume on his feet. It's because she was overwhelmed by his kindness towards her. And the Pharisee, it wasn't that he wasn't as sinful. He was not aware of his need of Jesus as much. And so because he wasn't aware, he didn't actually receive the love that could have been offered that was his. Really, there's two things in this first part is that is actually coming to him and receiving his love. We have to be aware of our need of it, and in realizing that we need to actually draw into him. That's the second thing. The next thing I really want to look at and how to love others is found in 1 John. And this is really a powerful verse. If you get it, it's going to free you up. This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we asked of him. So as you look at this verse, there's a strong confidence in there, that we have confidence to have whatever we ask. And some of you realize this and it kind of caught that little caveat in there. It says if we ask anything according to his will. And then it's well, that really slows us down on our prayers, because we feel like we don't know what his will is. But the thing you want to look at is we do know a lot of his will, because we do have the Bible. And the Bible tells us what he wants of us. And so when the Bible tells us, in this circumstance, he tells us to love others, to love our enemies, to love those who are out to do things against you. This is not wondering what we need to do. We actually know his will is to love. So then we can ask God to help us love, because we know that he wants to give us the love in order to be able to love. And we looked at that earlier. He wants to love us. We love because God first loved us. And so we know that he wants to give us that love. And so we can ask with confidence, and then we can move forward with faith that he's going to give us this love that we need in order to love other people well. In reality, he seems to do this a lot in a lot of different things, is that we don't feel the love until we actually start loving other people. If you look at the Bible, it's almost he looks for ways for us to display our faith. And for us to display our faith is actually going towards that person that we don't feel loved and saying, I am going to love you, and choosing to love, and then finding love along the way. And we see that often as the passages where Abraham is going to sacrifice Isaac. The ram doesn't appear until he raises the knife on his son that is already strapped down. When the Israelites cross the river Jordan, they have to step their foot into the water that's already raging, overflowing the banks, fearing that may be swept away, but their foot has to touch the water before the waters part and they can actually walk across on dry land. And then the same instance, those Israelites, when they go to Jericho, the walls don't fall down until the seventh day. They've already walked around those walls 7 full days, and the last time 7 times, and then they shout, and it's like they've gone, shown their faith in a lot of ways, and then it falls down. And then you look at the Naaman, the leper, and so he's this general. He goes to Elijah to find healing. He has to dip himself 7 times in this river. You see at first he didn't even want to, but it's after that 7th time he dips in that his skin becomes clean. And even Jesus, when he multiplies the bread, the fish and loaves, he only has a small lunch, and then he says that's enough. He offers it up and blesses the food, and it's as they're passing it out that the food multiplies and be able to feed the 5,000 and the 4,000, both different occasions. And of course, Peter, he doesn't know that he's going to be able to walk across the water until he steps out in this raging kind of stormy waters. And even in the midst of it, you see him kind of losing faith, and he has to look up to Jesus for help. But you see that it's a midst of going that we actually find the faith, that we have faith in the midst of it. So in reality, what we'll look at is how to love others. And so in the midst of this, it's like there's two things. There's like God wants us to love, and so we know He wants us to love. He's going to give us what we ask for, and He's also going to help us, and we have to move forward in faith to do that. Because the thing is, we can serve people well. We can do a whole bunch of nice things, and as we're caregivers, and be there and be empathetic and sympathetic and all these different things to take care of their needs and do what looks right. But if we don't have love, we're not accomplishing anything, especially in the kingdom. It says that without love we're doing nothing. We're nothing but a sounding gong. It's just kind of we're making a big show, but nothing's coming out of it. So these 3 things can help us with our love. God helps us to love, and we've talked about this. Our awareness of His forgiveness helps us to love, and His love is always available by faith. So as we come to a close, again, I just wanted to encourage you to take time to pull away and just ask God, what are a couple things that you want to show me? And write those down, because as you write them down, it's going to imprint them on your mind and imprint them on your heart that this is something true. And I think even for this is like write out some declarations, and that's like, I have all that I need to love the people in my life. Or maybe you want to find a specific person that's hard for you. Maybe it's someone you're working for or offering care to, and say, this person is going to receive my love today. And you're actually making declarations like, I'm choosing to believe you, God. I'm choosing to say yes to you. Maybe even write those down and make a daily declaration. Because just because you say it once doesn't mean that you're going to have to continue to work it out. Because remember the verse we talked about earlier on, that we work out with fear and trembling what God has worked in us. And then even in John 8, where Jesus says the truth will set us free, it's the idea that as we hold on to these teachings, you look at the verse before, as we hold on to these teachings, then we'll know the truth, and the truth will set us free. So it's not just, okay, this is true. God's loved me, and I'm going to be able to give love to other people. I could have faith, and I can love other people. There's a bit of working out to say, I'm choosing to believe this over my life circumstances, over what I see. Yes, I know that this person is hard to love, and I'm struggling with it, but I'm going to choose to love them, and I'm going to have faith that God's going to give me the love for them as I continue to move forward towards them and not away from them. And so having those declarations of saying, you know what, I might have failed yesterday, I might have failed for a month now, but I'm going to continue to press in because I know this was God's called for me. I know it's His will for my life, and I'm going to continue to do it until I get it right, because it's important to me, and God is important to me, because I know that He's loved me well, and He has never given up on me. I've made several mistakes in my life, even loving this person, and He's not mad at me. He continues to love me in the midst of it, and so I'm going to continue to love this person. And so even think about that person that you're thinking, and say, God, what are some things that could help me love them? And how can I love that person? That question right there is actually going to segue really well into the next lesson and what we're going to talk about. But as for today, we're going to close, and I really appreciate your time. And thank you for joining us until the next lesson.
We hope you enjoyed this lesson from Kevin Shorter on the Academy of Powerful Caregivers. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to apc@josiahscovenant.com. Be sure to check out the next lesson on how to greatly increase your love for others.